GMC Jammu. I'm lecturer in physiology. The topic of my presentation is brainwave pattern during cognitive task on EEG. Next. So different brain waves are produced during cognitive activities and at rest. The alpha wave with a frequency of 8 to 13 Hz, 40 to 100 microvolt amplitude is recorded during wakeful relaxation with eyes closed, while beta waves with frequency of 13 to 30 Hz, 2 to 20 microvolts amplitude is recording during busy or anxious thinking and active concentration. Next. Intelligence quotient or IQ, it is the intellectual prowess of human which is marked by high cognition, motivation, and self-awareness. There are two forms of IQs, that is the fluid intelligence which measures the speed of reasoning and memory, and crystalline intelligence by which knowledge skills obtained continuously through learning and experiences are measured. Next. So IQ test, it is a form of cognitive task that requires active concentration and hence beta wave generation on EEG. The present study was designed to study the pattern of these alpha and beta waves in different IQ groups and change in brain activity with IQ testing. Next. My study was performed on 50 subjects in the college-going students. The students were BSc paramedical students in the age group of 18 to 25 years. They were chosen randomly with no gender bias. The written voluntary consent was taken for the EEG study. This EEG study was done in two phases. In the first phase, the basal EEG recording was done for approximately 3 minutes. And in the second phase, the subjects were told to perform IQ testing, and while performing the IQ test, the EEG was measured simultaneously. Next. Based on the IQ scores, the subjects were grouped as follow. Above average, the total number of subjects were 4. Average, the subjects were 21 in number. Below average, 18 in number. And borderline, there were 7 subjects. The pattern of alpha and beta waves was studied in all these IQ groups. Next. The inclusion criteria was college-going students in the age group of 18 to 25 years and healthy individuals with no significant medical history. The exclusion criteria included any significant drug or alcohol abuse, psychiatric illness, CNS disorders, sleep disorders, any significant medical history including asthma, immune disorders, hypertension, seizures, or any other medical condition. Next. The statistical test that was used was Wilcoxon-Ransom test or Mann-Whitney test, and based on that, the study was characterized in the results were characterized into significant, more significant, and highly significant at p-values less than 0.05, 0.01, and 0.001 level. Next. So from the 50 subjects chosen, there were 32 males and 18 females. They were divided into 4 groups. The group 1 included above average with males 4, there was no female. Group 2 average with 19 males and no female. Group 3 below average, there were 6 males and 12 females. And group 4 was borderline with 3 males and 4 females. In all these group, beta wave activity and alpha wave activity, both frequency and voltage were observed. Next. So the IQ in each group was as follow. Group 1, the average was 122.75. In group 2, the average IQ scores were 115.04 with more in males and less in females. Group 3, 99.33 was the average IQ scores, and in group 4, it was 85. Next. The alpha activities were recorded mostly in the parietal region. So for that, the parieto-temporal and parieto-occipital electrodes were studied. All the evenly recorded electrodes are from the right hemisphere, and the odd electrodes are represent the left hemisphere. So in this bar diagram, we can see that the alpha activity in group 1 was higher in the right hemisphere compared to the left. The right hemisphere is represented by the blue and the green bar charts, and the left hemisphere is represented by this orange and the gray bar charts. So in group 1 and group 2, the right-sided hemisphere activity was more, that is the frequency was more as compared to the left. But in the lower IQ groups, that is group 3 and 4, the left-sided hemisphere activity was more in terms of frequency. Next. Alpha activity voltage. The voltage also showed similar results, where the group 1 and 2, as represented by the green and the blue bars, the right hemisphere, the activity of the voltage, that is higher voltage, was recorded in the right hemisphere in group 1 and group 2. But in group 3 and group 4, the activity, the voltage was higher in the left hemisphere. That is represented by this orange and gray bars. Next. In beta activity, the comparison was made between the basal EEG value and during performance of the IQ value. So the P value that was recorded, that was compared in all the 4 groups, and the beta activity was recorded mostly in the frontal and the central regions. Although background activities were also present, but the prominent results were only shown in the frontal and the central region. So the beta wave activity in the frontal region, where the P values were compared between the baseline and during IQ testing, the results were shown as below. Can you please shift to the next slide? So this was the beta activity in this left hemisphere and right hemisphere. All the activities were more in the left hemisphere in all the 4 groups at different level of significance. For the left hemisphere, we chose the FP1 and 3 and FP1 and F7 electrodes, and for the right hemisphere, we chose the FP2 and F4 and FP2 and F8 electrode system. In group 1, the significance was higher and the significance decreased as the IQ scores decreased, but the activity was more pronounced in each group for left hemisphere, and the group 4, which showed the non-significant results in all the 4 leads in both right and the left hemisphere. Next. Next slide. So for the frequency in the central region, again the P values were compared and the results were shown as below. The left hemisphere, as seen in the electrodes F3C3 and C3P3, and for the right hemisphere F4C4 and C4P4. So the group 1, group 2, group 3 and group 4 all showed results that were more dominant on the left side as compared to the right side, and the non-significant results were obtained in the group 3 and group 4 in the right hemisphere, and for group 4 in both left and the right hemispheres. But the overall activity was more dominant on the left hemisphere as compared to the right hemisphere. Next slide. So voltage also was recorded in the frontal area. Next slide. Next slide, please. For the voltage in the frontal area, the electrodes for the left, ma'am, just previous one. Yes. For the left, no, ma'am, previous one. Previous. Yes. Next. Voltage in the central area. Next slide, please. Yes. So for the voltage in the central area, the left hemisphere F3P3, F3C3, C3P3, and for the right hemisphere F4C4 and C4P4 electrode systems were studied. In group 1, the significance was at the level of 0.01, while in the left hemisphere. For group 1, the significance was at the level of 0.05 at the level in the right hemisphere. Similarly, the significance level decreased as the IQ score decreased, with non-significant results being obtained for group 4 in left and right both hemispheres. Next. So the conclusion of the present study was that the higher IQ levels reported right dominant alpha activity, while lower IQ scores exhibited left hemisphere dominant alpha activity. Beta activity was left hemisphere dominant in all the IQ groups. Thank you.